What a time to be celebrating May Day and the victories of working class struggles, especially as we face such huge challenges now for the working class across the world. In India, especially while healthcare workers, ASHA workers, other workers engaged in the production and provision of essential goods and services continue to work despite the lack of safety equipment, extra pay, or healthcare support. There are thousands of other workers losing their wages and jobs because of the nationwide lockdown without a plan. We've just heard that the lockdown has been extended by 2 more weeks, not just in the hotspots, but across the country. Of course, the details of whether it's going to be as stringent or not, we are yet to hear. But this it's quite a significant crisis, and I think for a lot of us, it's the first of this kind that we've seen in our lifetime. And what do we get as a response from the government and its minions? We get legislation that further dismantles hard-won labor rights and further cuts in wages at a time like this. Government is pushing for increasing the workday from 8 to 9 hours, 8 to 12 hours. In some states, it has already been issued. There's no surprise that the Prime Minister's home state of Gujarat is one of the states in which this has happened. But what else can be expected from a state that is of and for the bourgeoisie? We've had Narayan Murthy say that workers in India should work for 60 hours a week from now on. Ambani has announced a 50% pay cut for his employees. Of course, they have nothing to say about how the rich should be taxed more or how wealth tax needs to be brought back. But while we discuss labor rights and, there is another aspect also, I think, going forward that we must not forget is that there's going to be an issue of thousands of students who now face a very uncertain future. Even before the pandemic arrived in India, student protests against fee hikes and increasing privatization of education were on the rise. Students across the country forced to take loans to fund their education are now going to be indebted, while job markets are going to be severely limited. Those dependent on state government scholarships may have to wait longer than they have to now to get their stipends as state coffers run dry. All of these are real problems that are going to be faced in the immediate future by students, by those who are planning for their future now. And it's going to be a serious question. There's no indication that the government is thinking about this seriously. The government was already unsympathetic to the question of students' rights, fees and stipends, just as it is unsympathetic to the question of workers' rights. So I think it should be clear now to all of us that this government and who it serves are good performers at best, but not much good for anything else, let alone fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. At such a time, our trade unions, such as the Center for Indian Trade Unions, also CITU, are engaged on the one hand in mobilizing relief for migrant workers stuck in various states and government relief centers across the country, as well as in mobilizing action against the anti-worker policies that this government is pushing under the guise of the pandemic. And it's a very difficult time to mobilize at this point also. So who better than Comrade Hemalata, the president of CITU, to give the May Day lecture today organized by the Progressive Students Forum on unity in resistance, the labor movement and student struggle. So without further ado, let me ask Comrade Hemalata to take the floor. It's all yours.
Thank you. As already Professor Kanitkar has told, now as the workers are facing the difficulties during this pandemic, similarly under the neoliberal policies, the students are also have been posting a lot of difficulties. So while extending my fraternal greetings and solidarity to the students and thanking the Progressive Students Federation for providing me this opportunity to participate in your lecture series, I just want to say that during this pandemic, the resistance, the subject that you have chosen, that united resistance of the students and the working class movements, that has to be strengthened. And it is not only the students and the working class movement, but all the other sections also. Workers' class movement, along with the other sections of the toiling masses, the peasants, the agricultural workers, and also the unemployed youth, the women, etc., and the artisans, all the other sections which are impacted by these policies, we need to together resist them. So when we are talking about the pandemic, we see that the government has, as just now, when the entire country was looking that there will be some relaxations, at least in the non-hotspot areas, there will be some scope for starting the economy again, because that is also necessary for the livelihoods of the people and their income and the entire country. Then the government announced like 15 days, 17. Even when it was first announced from March 25th, there was no preparation on the part of the government. There was no plan. Nobody knows what the plan of the government is. And they have not seen, particularly the poor and the working class. I think there were no way under the radar of the government when it attempts how to solve their problems. What will be the problems that they will face, the migrant workers, the workers in the unorganized sector, how their incomes can be protected. Only it issued as guidelines, a direction that workers should not be retrenched and their wages should not be cut. Those who are on leave, they also should be treated as if they are on duty and their wages should be paid. So, but this is not being implemented. How to ensure that it is implemented? The government did not take any action on that. Immediately after this announcement, we have asked, we have written to the Prime Minister and also to the Labour Minister, asking that there should be some statutory backing for that. For the government, because even when there are laws for the protection of the conditions of the workers, they are being flouted. So when under this, when the government is giving certain guidelines, there should be backed by legal this thing, statutory this thing, but that has not been done. And now we see that under the guise of this pandemic, the government also is going ahead with several measures. So one, it is the working class, the workers, particularly in the unorganized sector, they are the worst who are affected. They are facing the brunt of this lockdown. Small enterprises, small establishments have been closed suddenly, and the migrant workers find that they don't have any work. And when they don't have any work, they don't have any income. And when they don't have any income, they are not able to feed their families, the workers, they go hungry. And though the government said that the house owner should not evict the workers during this period, many places the house owners have evicted them and suddenly they find that they don't have any shelter. And what is the plan for the government to ensure that they are having shelter, they have food? Initially, there was no shelter. Shelters have been constructed only when the workers have started moving and even by walk they started. Then the government constructed some shelters, etc. So this is one, that is the workers are totally, the Prime Minister himself calls that the corporates, they are the wealth creators. It is not the real wealth creators, the workers, the farmers, the agricultural workers who produce the wealth, out of which the wealth which is being cornered by the big corporates and the landlords, they are not recognized. They are not provided anything. Even before that, this crisis, the pandemic, the entire crisis because of the pandemic, it has not arisen suddenly. It did not come suddenly. It was already, there was a crisis. Globally, there was a crisis since 2007, 8, and there are saying that even in the USA, employment is increasing or there are some green shoots. But what is the real situation? In the USA, whatever the employment was there, it was only precarious employment. Everywhere the jobs were precarious. Even in countries where earlier there were permanent jobs with social security, we find that the jobs are becoming precarious, whether they are in the Europe, zero-based work or part-time work people have to work 2-3 jobs to sustain themselves and their families. So that type of thing was there. And in that background, there was a lot of struggles of the working class all over the world. And then this crisis, when it was there, then this pandemic has struck. And in many countries, because of the neoliberal policies, they could not cope up with this also. Today, what do we see? In US, which is the most powerful country in the world, and there the largest number of infections of COVID, around 1/3 of the total global infections of this coronavirus are in the US. Around 1/4, I think the number of deaths has crossed 61,000 in the USA. So a country which can produce missiles, which can produce fighter jets, submarines, which is always on ready to fight with its army or navy, military, etc. around the world, threatening the different countries, imposing sanctions on them, threatening going to war with them. Why can't it protect its own people? Why should they not be able to provide masks? Why there are no protective equipment? Why there is no all these things for the common people? Why should the people die in such a large extent? And because mainly the system that it is mainly the private sector in the USA, which is the prominent place, and they are not taking up this case. In our country also. In our country, around 2/3 of the hospital beds are in the private sector. Around 80% of the ventilators are in the private sector. But what is the role of the private sector today? The private sector, not only they are not treating COVID cases, but even the others, they are not providing. They simply shut down their hospitals because of the fear, because they are afraid, they don't want to take the risk. So even the other patients are also suffering. And the entire load is on the public sector, which has been neglected totally during the last 3 decades. The lakhs and lakhs of posts of doctors are vacant, nurses are vacant, there are no beds. Even the primary health centers have been privatized in some states like Rajasthan during the BJP rule. And now also the expenditure on health is being done. Our country is one of the countries, the lowest public expenditure on health. 70% of the health expenditure is out of the pocket borne by the people. And this is increased because of the neoliberal policies. So that is even in England, where the national health system was an efficient system, that has been neglected during this period. And there also we see that it is not being able to cope up and large number of deaths are taking place. Whereas alternatively, in the socialist countries like Vietnam, it's a very small country, or Cuba, even smaller country, and Cuba has been facing sanctions and isolation by the USA. USA was not allowing any even medical equipment, etc., other things to go to Cuba, and they were not even allowing. The system is such a cruel thing, imperialism, that they are not allowing the Cuban doctors, Cuban medical equipment to go to Iran and such other countries so they can help that also. But what we find is these are the countries where the number of cases is very low, number of deaths is almost nil, whereas in other countries. So what is the difference? That is what we need to understand. This corona pandemic has brought to the fore this contrast between this system and the socialist system, between the system which is for the profits, run by the profits, and the system which is for the people, for the benefit of the people. So this contrast is one thing we need to understand. And that is the reason why today, in the midst of this crisis, our government is taking such steps. As the professor has told already, that when the people are under lockdown, unorganized workers are suffering. Even in the public sector, the contract workers are not being paid. The retrenchments are taking place even in the public sector, even in the private organized sector, multinational companies, they are retrenching the workers. IT sector, we have found, we have got several cases from multinational companies in Pune, in Bangalore, in Chennai, Gurgaon, and in Kolkata, etc., where the companies have retrenched their workers and they are not paying the wages, including women. A woman who was pregnant also was removed from the service. So that is what they are doing. So this also they are trying to protect their profits. The entire burden, whether it is of the economic crisis, whether it is of this health crisis, all these are being shifted on to the shoulders of the working class workers and toiling people, common people. On the one hand, they are not having proper health facilities. Now they are losing their incomes and jobs and the social security benefits. And now the government, we have written so many letters to the government that at least you ensure that your own guidelines are implemented. But till now, neither we have received any response in action in taking back the workers or in responding to that type of thing. And instead of that, the government is trying to increase the working hours. The government already, the state governments of Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, and Punjab, and several other states, they have already issued notifications saying that the working hour will be should not be more than 12 hours, which was 8 hours. This is the irony. Today, it is 134 years when the working class has fought for a working 8-hour workday. So many workers have given their lives, they have sacrificed their lives and everything. After that, only this has become established. May Day, of course, 1886 may not be the starting point of 8-hour work. It was the struggle started earlier also, and it is continuing even now. But at least it was accepted as the norm internationally by the ILO, etc. There was some legal protection for the workers, and not only the working day, all whatever the benefits today the working class is enjoying, whether it is minimum wages, whether it is social security benefits, whether it is the right to organize and collective bargaining, right to go on strike, etc., all these, each and every one was won by the working class only through their struggles. Nobody gave them on a platter any of these benefits. But now, one by one, everything is being snatched away. First, as a solution to the crisis, that is, started in late 1970s, etc., 80s, etc., and in these neoliberal policies were introduced in our country in 1991. What was the purpose? One of the main objectives of these policies is to protect their profits by attacking the workers, their right to organization, and mainly weakening their collective strength, because the strength of the workers is in their unity, in their collective actions. So that the trade unions, which is reflected in the form of trade unions, they want to weaken the trade unions, and that action is taking place in the terms of labor law reforms. What they call reforms is actually attacks on the working class conditions, flexibility of work, work from home, the employer-employee relationship. There are so many changes. There is the permanent nature of work is coming down. Attack on wages. Wages have stagnated in many countries almost from the 60s. It is almost the same. And attack on their welfare benefits, pensions, working hours. So all these things. And now, and that is one of the reasons when we saw that in the 1819 period, there were a lot of struggles by the working class again to protect those rights. The working class actually was not asking for any more rights. They were asking for the protection of their hard-won rights. So that also was the reflection in France we saw, in Greece we saw, in Spain we saw, in Latin America, in India, the struggles, the joint trade union strikes, the strikes of the struggles of the workers and the kisans, etc. So this was the situation when in 2020 we saw this pandemic striking, this coronavirus striking. So now, just before this thing, the government has provided some relaxations to the corporates to the extent of around 1.67 or so crores, lakhs crores of rupees exemptions to the corporates. And now, after the coronavirus, what is the government of India? Their attitude to the, they have announced 1.67 lakh crores of package. And out of this package, which is itself only 0.8% of our GDP. Many countries have announced 5%, 10%, even more of their GDP for the attending this crisis, for providing some relief. But here it is only very nominal, and of that also some components that the allotment, they have said that we have increased the wages for the Manrega workers to 200. There is no work. The Manrega has no work, and what is the point increasing? For that also, actually, it was there. The allotment was there in the union budget. Similarly, for the Kisans, that was there in the union budget. So if you remove that, it becomes even lower. So in that situation, the government should have allotted more, should have given some cash benefits for the food. There are today around 7 crore tons of food grains are rotting in our godowns, FCI godowns. But the government is, we have been demanding, but the government is not giving free rations to all the needy people. If even that much is given, free rations to all the needy, 7,500 rupees, what we have demanded, all different trade unions and different other sections of the Kisans, organizations, etc., etc., they have also demanded that cash transfer to all non-income tax paying families should be there. So that will not come to much, but even that they are not. Is it the lack of resources? What we need to think is really the government is not having the resources. Whatever they are doing, even the central government, it is pushing on to the state governments. State governments' resources are limited, and the central government, the PM care funds also, they are not giving any accounts. They are not sharing that money with the states. They are putting entire burden onto the states. But what the responsibility of the central government, they are not discharging anything. And what we told earlier also, that when we see, even during this period also, it has come that they are giving concessions or writing off the debt of the NPS of those defaulters, willful defaulters also. That is also a huge amount. Every year, since the last around 10-15 years, the government, central government, in its budget, they are providing different types of concessions in the name of employment generation, incentives for the corporates to generate employment, around 5 lakh crores of rupees every year. And then the amount of tax that they are evading, they have agreed that it is their due, they have to pay the tax. There is no controversy on that. They have not contested that, but they are not paying the tax. And in addition to these LPs, altogether we have calculated that the big corporates owe to the government today is that comes to around 15.62 lakh crores. If that money the government is serious to take from them and spend for supporting the people, for protecting their employment, that could have benefited the people. Any government which is concerned about the people should have done that. And similarly, about many state governments, today the MSME, the section, our majority of our employment is in the unorganized sector. According to the government, 93% of our employment is in the unorganized sector, and of that, industrial employment, etc., it's mainly the MSME sector that provides unemployment, 90% of them. And the results are not able to give this. Many countries are paying, the governments are paying the wages of the workers on these sectors. But our government is not doing. So they are not able to sustain themselves. They cannot pay the wages of the workers. So they are closing and the workers are losing their employment. So this is a very critical situation the working class is facing today. And in the midst of that, as we have already told, the government wants to increase the working hours. And secondly, the pending bills, the codification of labor laws. The government has decided that 44 central labor laws will be codified into 4. They will be merged into 4 labor codes. Already the wage on codes bill that is passed, it has become an act. 3 wage codes are pending bills. The wage code the code on industrial relations, the code on social security, the code on occupational health and safety and working conditions. They are with the parliamentary standing committees. Now the reports indicate that the government wants to hasten in somehow they bring them into force through either ordinance or through some executive order. So the dangerous thing is, most dangerous is the industrial relations code. If that comes into force, the right to organization of the workers will be totally almost taken away. It will be very difficult for the workers to have their own organization, to register the organization, to have their own elected leaders, and almost impossible to go on a legal strike. They cannot go on a legal strike. Every strike will become illegal. And now there are certain conditions for giving notice prior to strike. It is only for the essential services. 14 days notice has to be given. Now, if this becomes, everybody has to give notice for the strike. And once they give the notice, then the conciliation proceedings are, they will be deemed to be coming into force. And once they come into force, they can't go on strike. So that becomes, your struggles will be difficult, your organization will be difficult. You cannot do anything. That is just disarming the workers. That is the main purpose. The workers should be totally become like slaves for the corporates and the government will work for the slaves. That is the idea of all these changes. Similar in the working hours, though now the government, state governments have given this notification. Already the proposal was there in the occupational safety and working conditions code, the proposal to increase the working hours. So all these things in this time of the crisis, they were there, and now the government wants to take advantage of this situation when the workers can't mobilize. They are isolated in their own places, lockdown is in force. This situation, the government wants to take advantage to enforce them. So this is a very big challenge. And this situation is one, as I told about the part of the neoliberal policies. And this one is the health sector, similarly the education sector. Now, when profits are coming down, because in the manufacturing sector, the manufacturing activities are coming down because people don't have the money to buy the products. That is one of the reasons for the crisis. People don't have, when the wages are stagnant, agriculture is in crisis, people don't have money in their pockets to buy things. Naturally, that will be reflected in the manufacturing also. But at the same time, education and health and other such services, people are compelled. Health you cannot neglect. You can't say that we will not spend money. You take loan or you take anything, you buy your whatever you have, and then you spend on the health. Similarly on education. Now these two have become major sources of profit, and the government is neglecting the government education sector. Lakhs and lakhs of posts of teachers are vacant. Now the students are have to take loans before they start earning. They are indebted. So that's the situation. And now in this situation, how are they going to repay their loans? So this is, and health and education, they have become profit things and they are privatizing, and that also is adding to this crisis. So in this situation, naturally, it is not only the working class that has to struggle. Working class, of course, is trying to increase the struggles despite this, but it is despite the lockdown period. But all sections have to come. Whoever is a victim of these policies, all of them can have to come together. One is who are the students. Most of the students are children of the workers or the peasants or the common farmers or even the agricultural workers. So when the parents find it, they don't have the jobs and they don't have the income. Even in the middle class families also, it is becoming increasing with the privatization of education. It is becoming difficult for even middle class families, so-called middle class families, to spend money on the children's education. Many places we find that children from common families, they are taking up some jobs. Either they are giving tuitions, earning some money, and they are spending on their education. So this is a very critical period. All together, all sections have to come together and to fight. So that is why in during this lockdown period, how do we do this lockdown? Now it is extended for 17 days. I mean, up to 17. It may not forever. Maybe some time it will be relaxed. It has to be relaxed, and normalcy has to be restored. But even during this time also, we need to protest. And after that also, we have to think about, now we have to think about how to mobilize all our energies and then unitedly fight, and not only fight, to take this fight to a higher level. That is the task before us as the CITU sees it. We have organized because there was resentment against this on the conditions of these migrant workers, on loss of employment, loss of wages, etc. So, but the people were doing what the Prime Minister was saying. आप ताली बजाओ, थाली बजाओ, या दिया जलाओ, light बंद करो, light on करो, all these things. So how do they register their protest? On 21st April, that is why we have given a call that in their own homes, on their balconies, or in their rooftops, on the streets, wherever it is possible, in their union offices, wherever it is possible, whether you stand alone, whether you stand along with your family members or friends or your union members, you have to raise your placards and also your flags and raise slogans for 10 minutes. That this increase in 12 works is not acceptable. We don't agree with that. And protective equipment for the ASHAs, Anganwadi workers, nurses, doctors, etc. Testing and relief, cash transfers and food, all these things we have raised for the agricultural workers, Manrega extension for the farmers, etc., etc. And that had a tremendous response beyond our expectation. I think the way that has gone to the grassroots level, even when we were planning, that much we were not able to mobilize at the grassroots level is what I personally feel. In more than 58,000 places, in more than 400 out of the 718 districts in our country, in all the 22 states where we have present, of course, except Tripura, the 23rd state, because the government did not allow. These more than 4.5 lakh people have stood with their placards and handwritten placards, and they have showed their own creativity in how they can do that, practicing the guidelines of the lockdown, maintaining physical distancing, etc. And today also, we are yet receiving, all the reports are coming. We said that opposing this 12 hours per day, opposing the labor law amendments and the wage cut, and demanding that the super rich should be taxed. Today, the billionaires, if their wealth is taxed, wealth tax was abolished in 2016-17 budget. If that is restored and these super rich are taxed, then naturally their concessions are withdrawn. There is money, but there is no political will. So that is why in the CITU conference earlier, we have been giving the slogan and we have been trying to implement to make the workers, to create that awareness, to understand the immediate issue, the link between the immediate issues of the workers, whether it is wages, whether it is working conditions or bonus or anything, the link between the issues, immediate issues, and the policies of the government. And the policies, the link between the policies and the politics which guide these policies, whether it is the BJP, whether it is the Congress, whether it is so many regional parties that are in power in different states, policy-wise, there is not much of a difference. So what is the link? That if the workers understand, then they understand the need to change these policies. And not only the policies, within this system, these policies which are being implemented for the benefit of the super rich, for the corporates, for the capitalist class, that cannot be changed. The system needs to be changed. If that awareness is created, then its unity is possible. Because if all sections are victims of this system. Now the neoliberal policies have become they have been proved to be unsustainable, and the anger, dissatisfaction against the capitalist system, particularly among the youth, including in USA, it is growing. People are searching for alternatives because they have understood that within this system, it is not a just system. It is a cruel system where the interests of the people are not taken care of. Even when people are suffering, what they want is only the growth in their profits. The profits, even during this period, Amazon's profits have increased, Reliance profits have increased, while the peoples are suffering and they are dying of hunger also. So it is the system that needs to be understood. So we have been trying to reach the unreached. That was our slogan. Beyond our membership, explain to the people this, unite all the sections and try to take this struggle to a higher level. Till now, we have been saying that no, we don't want this, we don't want this. What do we want? Concretely, and how it is possible, why the government is not doing this, if we can explain to the people. And that is why today unemployment is a big problem. Privatization of health and education systems, they are a big problem in addition to the work. So we said that in addition to the workers' problems, the CITU has to take up the issues of all the other sections of the people, of the peasants, agricultural workers, of the youth and students. And in 2018, we had a big demonstration along with the Kisan Sabha and Agricultural Workers Union. And this year, in the last conference which we had in January end, we have planned to take up the issue of unemployment along with the students' organizations and youth organizations, because it is they who will be facing. The workers are also facing unemployment situation because of loss of employment. Along with that, what you call underemployment and indecent employment, all these conditions are there. So it is not, there is no contradiction between the interests of the workers and the students and the youth. So all together, if we fight together, then we can bring pressure on the government, and the people understand about the system, or the failure of the system, about the cruelty, injustice of this capitalist system. We have to take the fight to a higher level. While fighting for the day-to-day issues, we have to fight with an objective of changing the system. The CITU constitution, we have said that within the system, it's not possible to emancipate the working class from exploitation. So that is our objective. So we have decided we have to strengthen the struggle, joint trade union struggle and joint struggles along with all sections of the toiling people to achieve our constitutional objective and also emancipate society from all exploitation. So today, when the pandemic has brought forward all these contrasts between an exploitation-free system and an exploitative system like the capitalist system, this can also be utilized. On the one hand, it provides very serious challenges in type of lack of opportunities for mobilization. But at the same time, it also provides an opportunity for the people to think about the real system critically and come together and to transcend the system. That is how the CITU looks at the present situation. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Comrade. I think that was, that covered a lot of ground. And I think, I don't think a summary is necessary. Just some important points and some questions have already come. I'll summarize some of them. As you rightly said, that we've been facing a situation of precarity of work all over the world. You have people taking multiple jobs, part-time jobs, and the pandemic has struck in a situation like this where there is already a lot of, especially in the world, in areas where which you can say are basically the testing grounds of neoliberalism. So we saw huge struggles against neoliberal policies in Chile, for example, late last year, and these were the that Chile was a poster child of neoliberalism in Latin America. And so this pandemic has struck in a situation where you already have some kind of turmoil or some kind of resistance that we see. So I think it is very important what you said in terms of how trade unions and all sections of society that are fighting against these policies, exploitative policies, and an exploitative system for a much longer time should use this as an opportunity to strengthen our struggles and take them forward and take them ahead. Uh, do you see one question that I had was that in terms of mobilizing for demanding a socialized healthcare system, you spoke about Vietnam and Cuba.
Cuba.
In our own country, Kerala has fared much better
Yeah.
than most others. So this is a very clear demonstration of what works. Even China, where it all started, I mean,
Yeah.
they didn't
Yes.
have an advantage that most of the other countries had of knowing what this pandemic entailed, and yet they were able to manage it much better than what we
Contain.
see in other countries. And this Dr. Aylward from the WHO who went to China also spoke about, everybody when they speak of China, they think that it is this, it's basically all done by government diktat. But he said that it was the
Yeah.
people, they mobilized actually community action, community support. And I think it's a very important point given that we in India seem to have implemented a response to COVID by policing and by curfew and by treating the population as if they're criminals and not victims
Yes.
of a pandemic. So how do you that contrast, and that, I'm sure there is a lot of anger amongst people also because they've been treated like this for no fault of theirs. Instead of trying to engage the community and mobilize action, community support to deal with the problem, we've sort of it's police it's been a police state that has been implemented in some sense. So how do you see that a response to that as well? Would I think, and in terms of a system which is exploitative and a state which is like the current state we are under, and how that responds to a pandemic situation versus some other kind of state. Another question.
Yes, it is
Yeah,
true.
yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. No, what you said is true, that instead of treating the victims of this disease with sympathy and try to protect them, the government is treating them as criminals. The migrant workers who were walking all the way, they are beaten up. And in some places, they were sprayed disinfectants. They were made to sit there. And even today, we see that the doctors and nurses in the colonies, they are beaten by the Residents Welfare Association. They are serving the people, and they are being beaten up in their colonies by the Resident Welfare Association people, and they are asking them to go away. So what is the type of thing? I think the way that we have handled science and scientific thinking in our country, particularly during the last 6-7 years, promoting all unscientific thing, even during this corona, what was the reaction in the initial stages? You use cow
Ayush.
dung, you take bath with cow urine, and all these things. That is the cure. Without knowing anything, starting from political leaders and everybody through social media. So this spread of unscientific, which prevents the community to mobilize in a different way. Where China, when the government enjoys the trust, so when the government does not enjoy the trust of the people, then this type of policing is required. And that mimicking simply in the name of community participation, you ask the people to put on the light, put out the lights, all these things. That is not community participation. Community participation with the awareness, why the lockdown was necessary, why this physical distancing is necessary, why hand washing is necessary, and then how do we do that, how do we take that message. That is lacking also. So that is the basic thing, where you think about the people, then you try to educate them. You take them into confidence, you involve them. Where you don't work for the people, you talk to the corporates, you take them into confidence, implement the advices. So that is the basic difference between these two systems.
Yes, Comrade, some of the questions that have come, some you have already covered in your talk, but some of them that are newer, I think, and specific, I will sort of ask. So one is, what should be our action plan for safeguarding the interests of workers, which shall inevitably be more threatened after the lockdown ends? Some of it you have addressed. If there is something else, because it's connected to the next question, it says that there is no national policy for domestic workers in India. Hence, they don't enjoy the status of registered workers. So, with this pandemic, they're going to suffer job losses or non-payment of salaries. In this scenario, what would be your suggestion for compensating wage losses or lost jobs for domestic workers?
It's not only domestic workers, of course. There are large numbers, and most of them are women, and they are very precarious. Their condition is very precarious, no doubt. But along with the domestic workers, all the other workers in the unorganized sector are also facing condition. And there is no policy for the domestic workers, national policy. That is also a fact. The government said that they will be developing, but yet it is not finalized as far as I know. So one thing is the government needs to compensate. As I told you, in some countries, the government has to compensate for that. They have to bear the expenditure of the wages of such workers. Because, and secondly, wherever it is possible from the CITU, because most of the employers, who are the employers of the domestic workers, it is mainly we, if we can say, the middle classes, those in the organized sector, it is they who employ the domestic workers. They are not working in any factory. The teachers, the lecturers, the bank employees, insurance employees, all these, we are the employees. So in CIT, immediately when the lockdown was announced, on 25th, we have sent a circular to all our state committees asking them that please ensure that our members don't withhold the wages of the domestic workers. We have consciously sent that. So how far it has been implemented, that we don't have. It is not possible at this stage to collect that information also. But at least we have been trying to create that awareness that we should not do that. And similarly, that alone will not suffice. The government, as I told, government has to take up the main responsibility, because not all the workers also will be able to pay them, because they are also not getting wages, and their wages are also being cut. They are also in similar condition. It's a difference of degrees. So the government has to take the responsibility. And even when the policy is there, government has also said that wages should not be cut. But how it will be paid? That the government, what we have demanded is that for the MSME and others, the government has to ensure cash transfer. What the demand of the 7,500 cash transfer for non-income tax paying people. That means that is applicable to the domestic workers also. So they should. We are demanding that they also should be paid this amount. So all this we are demanding, but the problem is that the government is not responding. They're not even thinking in that terms. That is what we need to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly, I mean, there is a big, you also mentioned when you were speaking that there is a, we have a package of 1.7 lakh crores, which is absolutely and completely inadequate, given the kind of, and not even that 1.7 lakh crores is not all new. Only a part of it is new expenditure, a part of it is already there in the budget. And so it is extremely inadequate, and it is not really clear how much that is going to increase, what kind of support they're going to give in the future. And it's a big question. Not just one is domestic workers, but you have a whole lot of other sectors as well that are affected. The other question was related in some sense, saying that it's ironic that ASHA workers who went on a strike because their working conditions were badly neglected have become the linchpin of COVID-19 response in the country. They've become frontline workers. So, do you think the situation will help in getting their demands addressed? Uh, it's an important question. I mean, I don't know if for most of it. If there is a response other than saying that this government is not likely to do anything unless you force its hand. But on top,
Yeah,
you
it's
come.
the only thing. Even when their conditions have improved, for example, ASHA workers are not even treated as workers like the others. Anganwadi workers, they are not workers. Para teachers are not employees. These midday meal workers are not workers. They are all social workers. So some are activists, some are social workers, some are guests like that, and they are paid in honorarium. ASHA was not even paid in honorarium. What they were paid is only an incentive, like a piece rate. You attend to a delivery, that is, you ensure that a woman delivers in a hospital, you will be paid so much. You ensure that she is immunized, she had health checkups, you will be paid so much. So, like that. So, it is after a lot of struggles that they have ensured that at least 2,000 minimum they will get every month. And in some states, through their struggles, they have managed to get 10,000 rupees in some states like Kerala, Telangana, etc. So now also they are registering. Now they have become the linchpins, like you have said. Despite all these things, they are working. And sometimes, some places they are protesting also. They are launched protest also. They are with arm bands, black arm bands. They have been working, and they have held dharnas also. And through these dharnas, even during this pandemic, they have managed in some places to get the protective gear like gloves, masks, etc. They have been able to do that. So what is the thing is that next we have to strengthen this. The basic thing, I think, it is not only this government, the policies, whatever these policies, we have to create awareness about these policies, why it is happening. We have to ask, we have to make the workers, each and every worker, each and every student, each and every person in our country, that why is this happening? Why the government, which has come to power through our votes, it is the people who have voted, whether it is the BSNL employees have voted, they are trying to, yes, the public sector employees have voted, now they are trying to totally dismantle the public sector, bank employees, insurance employees, all these people with lot of illusions. So why that? We vote for the governments, which are for the party, and after that they are implementing why it is happening, whom interest they are trying to protect, why is our interest neglected, why is our voice not heard. This why has to be raised in a large manner. People have to be helped to think scientifically, find the answer, and then once they raise this question and find the answer, they will also together find a solution. So that is, I think, what we need to do today.
It's very interesting that you because the next question I think goes to speaks to another form of pseudoscience that is very much prevalent now in the environmental sector. The question that has been asked is that noticing cleaner air and water as a result of reduced economic activity during lockdown, some environmentalists have called for the government to not let such industries reopen. Instead of spending on treatment facilities and instead of spending on water treatment, pollution reduction, etc. technologies, don't let them reopen. There has been this deindustrialization, degrowth kind of a narrative for a long time, and the pandemic is being used as this thing to lend voice to that kind of a narrative. But if the government opts such methods, wouldn't it be small-scale industries and workers who will be affected? Not just small-scale industries. I mean, let me add to that question. It's going to be workers of large-scale industries as well. So this kind of a sort of middle-class romantic view of the environment, also is coming up, and that also ends up being an anti-worker sort of kind of view. So how do you would you address something like that?
No, you have already told that It cannot be like that. Industries without industrialization, there cannot be progress. Already in our country, the type of deindustrialization because of these policies is taking place. So we have to see that they have to follow the environmental norms, and they have to treat the waste from their factories before releasing that. And the water treatment also should be done. That is not being done. If that is done, they have to be proper protective. Now, what is under this government particularly, they are giving permissions also without taking care any of anything. That is one extreme, and this is one extreme. So there should be a balance. The corporates, they should be these laws to protect the environment should be enforced. They should not be allowed their waste to the sea and water bodies, rivers, etc., creating pollution, thereby affecting the health of the people also. That it can be done. It is not that you ban the industries. If you ban the industries, how there will be progress? How there will be livelihood? How you will advance? So it has to be a balanced approach.
Absolutely. And even now, I mean, it is not, we are not saying that we will be delivered from this pandemic by simply praying to Mother Nature. No, we are looking for a vaccine or medicines or ventilators. And so it is science in some sense that would help us come out of this. That's what we are looking towards, not to some, backward, not looking backwards in some sense for solutions. So I think we've covered a lot of ground on May Day, and the situation is full of challenges. I think there is no doubt about it. But I think one thing that you said, Comrade, was extremely important. That it has brought out the contradictions in the system quite clearly. Whether it is the healthcare system or the system of who are the wealth creators, who are the people that actually that are important, who are the wealth creators in the nation, and who benefit from the creation of that wealth. And therefore, I think to take the struggle to the next level, to join hands across sectors, workers, workers in the formal economy, informal economy, public sector, private sector, IT sector workers now are, like I said right at the beginning, Narayan Murthy has said, let workers work for 60 hours a week. I mean, they were already unorganized in some sense, and their parents' generation won the battles of, through trade unions, and it is the children who are in the IT sector now who are basically part of the unorganized workforce in some sense. So let's hope that all of these sections join, farmers, agricultural workers, join hands to resolve some of these contradictions in favor of the working class. These contradictions should not be allowed to be resolved in favor of the capitalist class again. And I think it's an important struggle. And, thank you so much, Comrade, for laying out the details of that struggle so clearly for us. So I will, hand the floor back to the Progressive Students Forum. We've covered everything.
Thank you for joining us today. First of all, we would like to thank Comrade K Hemalata for delivering such a wonderful lecture, and Dr. Tejal Kanitkar for chairing this session, and which is in a very short notice. So we would like to thank both of you for joining us session, and I would like to thank all the viewers joined and supported us in this lecture, and not only this one, the past 9 lectures and all lectures. As a concluding note, we would like to thank all our speakers from Badal Saroj, T. Sundararaman, Dr. Thomas Isaac, R. Ramkumar, Brenda Karat, Barnasrida Dev, Gaurav Ghosh, Rasmida Ramchandran, Michael Roberts, K. Hemalata, Dipshita Dar, T. Jayaraman, and Tejal Kanitkar. We would like to thank all our speakers, all our guests joined. And also, we would like to thank all our supporters who have been watching this lecture and sharing and inviting friends to watch and keeping the copy of the video. So we would like to thank all our supporters and all the alumni which has extensively supported this entire series. So we would like to thank them. And once again, birthday greetings from Progressive Students Forum to each and everyone. And we'll see you everyone soon with one new other program. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.